Today, we're going to go over silent letters in English and some of the rules for them and the many exceptions that these rules have. Stick with us, you're going to learn a lot about correct English pronunciation. What's up with all these silent letters? Let's just go through the alphabet. We'll start with A. A is silent in the suffix A-L-L-Y. And it's tricky because it looks like it should be a syllable, but it's not. Logically, not logically, just logically, typically, logically, typically, radically. Every time you see A-L-L-Y at the end of a word, the A is silent. No, sorry, that would be too simple. Vocally is not vocally. It is 3 syllables. Legally is not legally. It's 3 syllables. So how do you know by looking? Well, you don't. This is what truly makes American English hard, but many of the words with A-L-L-Y at the ending have a silent A. B. Now there are some clearer rules here, thankfully. We don't pronounce B after M. Climb, dumb, bomb, comb, thumb. All of these end in the M sound. If I did pronounce the B, it would sound like this. Climb, climb. But that's not right, it's climb. Oh great, every time you see M followed by B, the B is silent. No, that's not actually true. As you get into longer words, you'll have to be a little bit more aware. For example, amber. The M is at the end of the first syllable, and the B is at the beginning of the second syllable. We do pronounce both the M and the B. Amber. Amber. Say that with me. Amber. Amber is like a stone, but I don't think it actually is a stone. It's used a lot in jewelry. It's also a word to describe this color. It's also a name for women. Amber. We also have ambivalent, ambassador, akimbo. Arms akimbo is when your arms are like this. Bent, akimbo. These are all examples of B not silent after M because it's in a different syllable. Ambivalent, ambassador, akimbo. There's another case where the B is silent when it comes before a T. Debt, subtle, doubt. No B sound in any of these words. Debt, subtle, doubt. What about this rule? Always? Is a B before a T always silent? No. In longer words, you'll find lots of exceptions. For example, a compound word, where the first word ends in B and the next word begins in T, like bobtail. Bob, bob, bobtail. It's not ba-tail, bobtail. We do say that B. Also with prefixes that end in a B, like OB and SUB. Obtain. B is not silent. Subtotal. B is not silent. The letter C. It's silent in the state name Connecticut. This middle C is silent. We don't say it at all. Connecticut. It can be silent after S, like in muscle, scissors, scent, fascinating, or seen. But it's not always silent, like in scatter or script. And sometimes it goes in a different direction and becomes an SH after S, like in the word conscience or luscious. You know, let's stop and think about this for a second. Every rule we've studied, there's an exception. So why study the rule? What we're doing here is going over fairly common words with a silent letter. American English pronunciation is not generally rule-oriented, so you have to learn the pronunciation of words individually. But it is useful to be exposed to these general rules in these common words that have a silent letter, so you can start learning them. I had a student once who lived in the US, and he worked at a seafood restaurant. And he didn't know that the L in salmon was silent. How would he if he'd never learned that or been taught that before? So what we're doing here is exposing you to these silent letters and also making sure you're aware that these rules are not absolute rules that can be applied in every situation. Okay, let's get to D. We have Wednesday. There's no rule here about why the D is silent, it just is in this word. It's also silent in handsome, in the word sandwich. If you look that up in a dictionary, you would see the D sound, but it's actually never pronounced that way. So Wednesday, handsome. The dictionary says no D, but sandwich, the dictionary does say D, but it hasn't caught up with the actual habits of how we speak. It's not uncommon to drop the D after N, so that's what's happening in sandwich. Also, words with the silent D, grandma and grandpa. Now with sandwich, I talked about habit. In the dictionary, it says there is a D sound, but that's not our habit anymore. The thing about the D between two consonants is it's really common in our habit to drop that D, to make it silent, even if that's not what the dictionary says. This happens in words like sandpaper, soundproof, landmark, windmill. We drop the D because it's between two other consonants. I've seen other teachers say the D is silent in a word like edge, bridge, or knowledge. Here's the thing. In the word edge, the consonant sound is the J sound, which in IPA is written like this: D, D, plus J, J, J. So the J sound actually has a D in it. So I don't think I would say the D is silent in these words. The D is part of the J sound. Okay, let's move on. The letter E. I'm going to go over a rule for this one, the ending E. But first, take a look at this word, audible. There's no vowel sound at the end of that word. Where's the E sound? This is a great time to talk about our sponsor for this video, Audible. And do you know what I love about Audible? There are thousands of audiobooks recorded by native speakers speaking every word you hear. So they're going to be correctly pronounced, silent letters and all. A great way to work on your English skills.
Today I want to highlight the great courses. These courses cover topics from all sorts of disciplines: math and science, history, business and economics, and so on. Today I want to recommend a course on conversation, 6 lessons for better communication. I know a lot of my students are concerned about speaking in English. This course, delivered in English by a native speaker, will help you consider the bigger picture of conversation and communication. You can get this, your first audiobook, for free, plus 2 free Audible originals when you try Audible for 30 days. Visit audible.com/Rachel'sEnglish or text Rachel's English to 500-500. The Audible originals that I mentioned are titles exclusive to Audible. You can't listen to them anywhere else. Created by celebrated storytellers, covering a diverse range of topics. There are even some Audible originals from the Great Courses category.
Again, that's audible.com/Rachel'sEnglish or text Rachel's English to 500-500 in the US. Audible is just an outstanding resource for studying English. There's an audiobook for everyone. Thank you, Audible, for sponsoring this video and supporting the language learners here in the Rachel's English community. Okay, now let's get back to that rule, silent ending E. This rule is taught quite a bit, so you're probably already familiar with it. Quite a bit. The word quite. I'm not saying a sound for the letter E on the end of that word, am I? Quite, quite. The word ends with the T sound, quite. But if I take away the E in that spelling, I have a different word, quit. So the ending E can affect the vowel before the final consonant. It makes it longer. Quit, I vowel versus quite, I diphthong. 2 sounds. Quite a bit. Now with bit, if I added an E at the end of that word, it would be bite. Again, the T is the final sound. The extra E doesn't add an extra sound at the end, but it does change the vowel to a longer vowel sound. Bite, bit. This happens with a lot of words: hop, hope, dim, dime, rob, robe, rat, rate, breath, breathe. But note the word cafe, we do pronounce that ending E even if it's written without the accent. Cafe. Also a note about ED endings. Regular verbs are written this way to show the past tense. And now there are clear pronunciation rules for these. If the unconjugated verb ends in T or D, then we do make a sound for the letter E in the ED ending, and we have an extra syllable, like land, landed. But if the last letter of the unconjugated verb is any other letter, then we don't make a sound for the letter E in the ed ending, and we just add a D or a T sound. For example, hum, hummed, not hummed, or pack, packed, not packed. I do have a video that goes over these rules for ed endings in a little bit more depth with a few more examples. So click here if you're interested, or see the link in the video description. The letter F. Okay, this letter is almost never silent, but actually the Merriam-Webster dictionary does give the primary pronunciation of fifth with a silent F in the middle. Fifth. That's how I say it. Just the first F sound, I vowel, and TH at the end. Fifth. The letter G. This is silent when a word begins with a GN. Gnome, gnat, gnaw. Also GN at the end of a word. Design, sign, rain, foreign, assign, campaign. Also GNE like champagne, cologne. You know, I did some looking and I didn't see any exceptions to these rules. Wouldn't that be neat if we found a rule with no exceptions? Also the combination GH after a vowel or diphthong, silent G. Daughter, bright, though, thigh, way, dough, ate. But there are some exceptions to this rule. Cough, rough, tough. There, GH does make a sound, it's the F sound. The letter H. There are some common words that begin with a silent H like hour, honor, honest, and herb. But most words that begin with an H do have an H sound like home, hope, happy. Words that begin with WH. These words have two different pronunciations, but the most common one is definitely with a silent H. Just a clean W sound. What, where, why, whistle. Sometimes the CH combination makes a K sound, which makes it feel like the H is silent, like in choir or chaos or echo. When GH is at the beginning of a word, H is silent, like in ghost or ghetto. H is silent after R, like in rhyme, rhythm, and rhubarb. But this rule doesn't work in compound words where the sounds are in two separate syllables like overheard or bear hug, or in the word perhaps. There, both sounds are pronounced. Perhaps. Perhaps this is a good time to take a minute, take a break, and let all this silence set in. The link to the second part of this two-part series is right here, but if you're seeing this video in its first week, that video isn't ready yet. It's coming out on Tuesday of next week, so be here to see it. If that's the case, I cannot recommend highly enough getting to know the International Phonetic Alphabet. Lots of dictionaries use it, and it's your key to understanding the pronunciation of any word, to knowing if any letters are silent. I've put together a playlist where I go over the IPA symbols for each sound in American English so you can really start to get comfortable with them. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure notifications are enabled. Then come and join me here every Tuesday where we have a new video studying something interesting about American English pronunciation. I love teaching you English. Thank you so much for being here, and see you next week.